Okay, my brothers, I'm back with part two of preventing others from entering into the kingdom by a lack of order, especially when it comes to any gifts operating or the tongues and how people are broadcasting it over the air, broadcasting it over TV. Foolishness, jibber jabber. And I'm totally embarrassed about it. Okay? You stopping others from entering in because they don't want to have anything to do with your madness. Now, those that I was talking about in part one that have some idea of what the church is supposed to be doing and how they operate, you got some brothers that I want to mention some names. And it's something that I read in their biography, or either I read it in an autobiography of the individuals' names that I mentioned. Huey Newton is one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in the 60s, late 60s. And he, if you know what he was doing and what he was trying to do with his organization, of course, the government had labeled it a black hate group. And I don't know if they said separatist, but I know they said black hate group. And it's just, it's just a lot of things that you can't say that the laws of the land, the government of the land is necessarily right when they address these people, because they had a 10-point program. It's clearly visible for all the people to see. And all the government wanted to do is focus on the fact that these guys were, I believe the word they used, anti-American, and they said they were Marxists, or they said that they were. But the grievances that they had, did the government try to work with them on it? That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But regardless, my point is preventing those from coming into the kingdom, preventing those from coming into church. Huey Newton his father was, quote unquote, a Baptist minister and a sharecropper. And he used to stand up against the of white resistance that, imposed on him as a sharecropper. And he would stand up, and I read some of the stories that he said about his father. His father was very courageous, and that's where he got a lot of his courage from. But Huey's father was a minister. Even though he started the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and you didn't see him have too much involvement with the regular church, maybe he did. I don't have all the information on that, but I'm saying that these guys have some idea about how these churches are ran. Okay, and another one is Malcolm X, which was called Malcolm Little. His father was a Baptist lay minister. And this man was, let's see if I have his name here. His name was Earl Little. That was Malcolm X's father, Earl Little. And he was a Baptist preacher. In fact, he was a Garveyite. This guy right here, Garvey. He's a Garveyite. And he followed the teachings of Marcus Garvey, talking about Africa for the Africans. And he used to preach heavy about returning to Africa and all of that. And the Klan threatened his life, threatened his family, And I believe at one point in Lansing, Michigan, they even burned his family's house down. And allegedly, the father was killed. This Baptist minister was killed. So Malcolm, he was Muslim. He became a Muslim and converted in prison. But he once was a child of a Baptist preacher. Huey Newton once was a child of a Baptist minister. And if you go back into some of these men's lives, you'll find that they had some involvement with the church. Even the Honorable Louis Farrakhan at one time was in the choir for one of the Protestant churches. I'm not sure if it's Presbyterian or Lutheran. But these brothers are not, these brothers are very knowledgeable and very articulate, very articulate. And they were able to spot things that go on in the church, which they didn't want to have any association with because they felt the church was on the back burner of helping with the struggles that afflict the African slave descendants and the African people, in the diaspora. And then you got some similar things going on in the African continent. You got Patrice Lumumba. I believe his background was Protestant. He attended the Protestant faith. And Marcus Mugabe, attended a Catholic school. A lot of these these former leaders had associations with the church. But you will find very interesting that they had to go outside of their church. Practically every guy that I've looked at their background, they went outside their church in order to try to do something for their people. And that's a shame, man. Because the church should be a salt of the earth. They should be a beacon of hope, a light in a dark world, preparing and pointing the people to the Lord, but also partaking in the social injustice. When I say partaking in social justice and partaking and speaking against social injustice, and many of them have. The Baptist Church is pretty well known for speaking out through the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that Dr. King used to be over. You have Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You have CORE, Congress of Racial Equality. I believe it's called CORE, Congress of Racial Equality. You have, I already said, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You had UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association, and NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Many, many more. Urban League. You had RNA, the Republic of New Africa, which was pretty radical, pretty rough, tough group. But many of those were targeted for elimination by the forces that were threatened by them in the West. Many of them were neutralized. So when we talk about the church sees this, and the church is supposed to be a soul, saving to the soul of man, even going past the natural need. And many of those men that are up there speaking the gospel are afraid to get on the very topics that a lot of these brothers touched on. And you got few men that do it. You got a guy that came in before Dr. King. His name was Vernon Johns. And he was over the same church that Dr. King was over. I believe it's called Ebenezer Baptist Church. It was in Alabama. And Vernon Johns was very outspoken Baptist preacher. In fact, he was probably harder than Dr. King, and you'll find a lot of these men tried to do it in the face of adversity, threats, terrorism. And so I bring all of this in to say that church has taken this soft approach to ministry, and they have allowed women by the masses to come in and bring ministry from the chief offices of the church, like bishop and archbishop and probably in some instances in the Jewish faith, rabbi. They're coming into these offices nowhere in the history of the Bible and the way that it is written and the way that the order that God had is being followed in many of these churches today. And so when we know the order of things, especially people like me, I don't want to come in and associate myself with an apostate church. Because if you have women bishops and stuff that is totally unscriptural, and those churches need to repent, and those women, they need to be set down. Because it's totally out of order. And if you look at all the way from the beginning, the books that we have, that they were made for the man and not the other way around. And you can call it chauvinism, you can call it anything you want, but this is not the world. This is the order of God. And like I said about those tongues, there's an order the way that you do those New Testament gifts. There's an order. Excuse me. There's an order. And when you go against that order, you create confusion. When you got these soft ministries now, they can't do what Huey Newton did, what Malcolm did. And you'll keep saying, well, that has nothing to do with the body of Christ. Hey, they were speaking for the people, and some of these things were needed in order to further and advance the cause of our people. But the church sits up, except for Dr. King's movement, who did get out and make some changes with his nonviolent passive resistance. I'm sorry, his nonviolent resistance. That's what it's called, nonviolent resistance. So the word resistance has to be right there with nonviolence. Not if you just say he was nonviolent, you're wrong. You have to say he was nonviolent and resistance, because many of the white power structure are very uncomfortable with what he was trying to do. Very uncomfortable. Let alone they were uncomfortable with what Malcolm was trying to do. So what I'm saying is we got order and responsibilities, and then we have to be concerned about the souls of men, even though the men fighting for their people. How do we incorporate them? How do we bring them in? Why do they have to be isolated from the church as though there's some demon when they're doing social justice? And then the church is sitting back many times not doing social justice, but claim that they are on the forefront of the gospel and bring them into the kingdom. But at the same time, the men checking in coffin boxes every time they get their head blown off just because they're black or they're African. And these preachers are not doing anything but talking about they're concerned about the man's soul instead of his family and his welfare. Some people are not doing that, but there's a lot of that going on. Preventing people from entering. It's an unattractive ministry. If you're gonna, you can't be, you got to be faithful all the way into death. That goes for me too. See? So there's an order. And when you break that order, and you got guys like me, guys like these dudes that used to be in the church under fathers who were preachers, they're not coming back. They're not coming back to the church because the church has failed them. The church has failed the community, and the church has failed to be a voice for the people when the people had no voice. The church is generating money that even if the government steps off and doesn't want to help the people, the church has money to be able to circulate and build industry and build things for their people. But you have to get these other organizations to come out here and do it because you don't want to do it because you're afraid. You're like Saul. You have to go get little David to go out and put all this armor on to go deal with the Philistines. When you got big old Saul, who's head and shoulders above all men in the Old Testament, and wouldn't go out there and face the Goliath. And I'm not saying that a Goliath and a David situation should be 100% every time. No. But there are some cases where the same faith that was back then is the same faith that we need now. The same fighting that was back then, we probably need that fighting today. So you prevent people from coming into the kingdom because of your weakness. And no man in his right mind, no real man, no real boy wants to be led by no darn woman. He should be leading his women and leading his people. When a boy's 15 years old, a decent mother would try to tell him to get out from under her skirt, get out from around her, and get out and play some football with these boys in American football and go out and tackle and wrestle, do some boxing, do some karate or something, but get out from away from your sisters and your mother. That's the way my mother did me, you know? And so you have to be men. You don't put your women out here to lead. You are leading. God called you. When God called Moses, Moses said he wasn't adequate enough. Who did he call? Aaron, his brother. Did he go get Moses' wife, who had been with him for 35 years? He went and got Aaron. Okay? And any other cases in the Old Testament, because that's our fight. So this is the end of part 2. I'll come back with you in part 3. Peace, love, and God bless.